The drive was 4 hours. The brunch lasted 40 minutes. The only seat for me was a folding chair pulled from the office after I arrived. My son said the words, "We thought you'd cancel," in a voice so light he did not even hear how the sentence sounded. I did not raise my voice. I did not embarrass him in front of his wife's parents. I sat in the folding chair beside the wall. I ate a small piece of quiche. I drank my orange juice. But by Tuesday morning, I had not cancelled. I had simply stopped doing the 7 things my son and his wife had been quietly counting on me to keep doing for the past 3 years. Here is what actually happened. My name is Marjorie Whitfield. I am 72 years old. My husband Robert died in 2020. We had been married for 48 years. Robert was a high school principal for 34 of those years. He was not a loud man. He was not dramatic. He was the kind of man who noticed things quietly, wrote them down carefully, and waited until the right moment to speak. I live in a small town in central Pennsylvania, in the same brick ranch house Robert and I bought in 1979. My son Daniel lives outside Washington, D.C., with his wife Brittany and their 2 daughters, Lily and Audrey. The drive between my house and Daniel's house is just under 4 hours each way, depending on traffic. I have driven that road approximately 14 times a year for the past 3 years. Sometimes for birthdays, sometimes for school plays, sometimes because Daniel called and said, "Mum, the girls miss you. Could you come down this weekend?" Sometimes for holidays, always at my own expense, always with my own gas. Always with a bag of presents in the back seat, a cooler of food I had cooked before the visit, and the small pillow I started bringing with me in 2022 because the mattress in their guest room was too firm for my back. I had not asked Daniel and Brittany to host me. I had simply been arriving when invited. They had simply been letting me. And somewhere along the way, without anyone saying it out loud, love had turned into expectation. This is a story about the Easter when I finally noticed. The invitation came in early March. It came by text. From Daniel. "Mom, Easter Sunday brunch at our place, 11 a.m. Brittany's parents are coming, just casual. Love you." I read the message twice. I noticed 3 things. The first thing I noticed was that the text came from Daniel, not Brittany. That had not always been the case. In the early years of their marriage, Brittany had included me in planning messages. She had texted me about holidays, birthdays, school events, and family gatherings. That changed sometime in late 2022. She removed me from a family group chat she used with her mother and sister for planning. She did not tell me I had been removed. I simply noticed, weeks later, that I had not heard anything from the chat in some time. The second thing I noticed was the phrase, "just casual." Brittany had been hosting Easter brunches for her own family for years, and they had never been just casual. There were always flowers, always a proper table, always matching napkins, always a menu planned around what her mother, Patricia, liked. I had met Patricia perhaps 6 times in 12 years. She had always been polite. She had never been warm. So when Daniel's text said, "just casual," I understood that it meant something. I did not yet know what. The third thing I noticed was the time. 11 a.m., an 11-minute brunch, 4 hours from my house, meant leaving my driveway before 7 in the morning. That did not frighten me. I had been waking before dawn for most of my adult life. But it told me something. If Daniel and Brittany wanted me there badly enough to invite me, they also knew exactly what that invitation required of me. I texted back, "Of course, sweetheart. I'll be there, looking forward to it." I was not, in truth, looking forward to it. I was already wondering what "just casual" was going to mean. I found out at the dining room table on Easter Sunday. Before I tell you about the brunch, I need to tell you about the 7 things. At the time, I did not think of them as a list. I thought of them as helping. That is how these things start. One little thing, then another, then another. Each one seems reasonable when it begins. Each one feels temporary. Each one feels like something a mother or grandmother would naturally do. And then one day, you realize no one is asking anymore. They are assuming. The first thing was the drive. I drove to Daniel's house about 14 times a year. 4 hours there, 4 hours back. In the same 3-year period, Daniel had come to my house twice. The second thing was summer camp. Lily was 10. Audrey was 8. Their day camp cost $2,200 per child per session. 2 children. 3 sessions. Approximately $13,000 a year. I had paid it since 2021. The first year, Brittany sent me a handwritten thank you card. The second year, she sent me the registration link. The third year, she sent me the deadline. That is how quietly gratitude becomes administration. The third thing was back to school clothes. In August of 2021, Daniel said, "Back to school shopping is brutal this year, Mom." The next time I visited, I took the girls to the mall. By the 3rd August, Brittany texted me a list. "To make it easier on you, Marjorie." The list was long. The bill was mine. The fourth thing was the cooler. I brought food almost every time I visited. Roast chicken, pot pies, frozen casseroles, cookies for the girls, soup if someone had been sick. Brittany stopped asking me to bring food in 2022. Instead, she began to assume I would. On the 2 visits, when I did not bring a cooler, she asked, with a small laugh, "Did you forget the cooler?" I had not forgotten. I had simply not had time to cook for someone else's family before driving 4 hours. The fifth thing was the Christmas cards. In November of 2022, Brittany asked if I would be willing to help out with the holiday cards this year. She gave me a list of 78 names and addresses. I wrote the cards by hand. I addressed the envelopes. I bought the stamps. The following year, she did not ask. She mailed me an updated list. There were 84 names on it. The sixth thing was birthdays in Brittany's family. Her mother, her father, her sister, her sister's children. Daniel told me in 2021, "Brittany's family is funny about birthdays, Mom. They notice when people forget." So I did not forget. For 3 years, I bought gifts for people I barely knew. The seventh thing was the monthly transfer. $200 a month into a small savings account in Daniel and Brittany's joint name, for the girls. It began when Daniel told me Brittany was stressed about long-term planning. I set up the automatic transfer the following Monday. It ran for 36 months. I never asked for an update on the account. I never received one. 7 things. Driving, camp, school clothes, cooler food, Christmas cards, in-law birthdays, monthly transfers. Just under $20,000 a year. For 3 years. Almost $60,000. I had not added it up before Easter. I would add it up on Tuesday morning, at my kitchen table, on a yellow legal pad, in my own handwriting. It would take me 90 minutes to find every receipt. When I finished, I would call my lawyer. But first there was the brunch. I left my house at 6:43 on Easter Sunday morning. I had set my alarm for 5. I showered. I dressed in a soft cream blouse and a pale blue cardigan. I wore the pearl earrings Robert had given me on our 40th anniversary. I loaded the car with a cooler. Inside it was a glazed ham I had cooked the day before, homemade dinner rolls, green beans, almondine, and a chocolate cake I had baked Saturday afternoon. I also packed a small overnight bag, because Daniel had told me, when I called the Wednesday before Easter, "Plan to stay over Sunday night, Mom. We want to get a good visit in." So I planned. I drove. The drive took 4 hours and 7 minutes. There was a backup near the Susquehanna River Bridge. I drank coffee from the thermos I had filled at home. I listened to an audiobook about a 19th century educator I had been working through across several drives. I arrived in Daniel's neighborhood at 10:53. I parked at the curb at 10:55. For 2 minutes, I sat in the car. That little pause began after Robert died. At first, it was grief. I would sit in the driveway before going inside anywhere, gathering myself before stepping into a room where he would not be. Over time, it became a habit. That morning, I took the pause. Then I got out. I lifted the cooler. I lifted the overnight bag. I walked up the front path. There was a new wreath on the door, pale yellow with small embroidered Easter eggs. Brittany had not made it. The little price tag was still hanging from one ribbon. I rang the bell. Daniel opened the door. He was wearing a navy sport coat and khakis. He looked surprised to see me. He said, "Mom, you came." I noticed the sentence. Not, "Mom, you're here." Not, "Come in, we've been waiting." You came. As if my arrival had been one possible outcome among several. I said, "Sweetheart, I told you I would." He stepped aside. I could hear voices from the dining room. Brittany. Her mother, Patricia. A man's voice I assumed was Brittany's father, Frank. Daniel took the cooler from me and carried it toward the kitchen. Over his shoulder, he said, "Mom, give me a second. I need to talk to you in the kitchen before we go in." I followed him. He set the cooler on the kitchen island. Then he turned around. His face had the careful expression it gets when his wife has told him what to say. He said, "Mom, listen, Brittany and I thought you'd cancel." I said, "Cancel?" He said, "Yeah, I mean, the drive is a lot. Easter morning, 4 hours. We figured you might wake up and decide it was too far. So we planned the brunch like you might not be coming. There's no place set for you at the table. I'll grab a chair from the office. We just didn't want to make a big deal if you couldn't make it." He smiled. That bright smile he uses when he wants me to make the moment easier for him. I did not smile back. I said, "Daniel, when did you and Brittany discuss the possibility that I might cancel?" He looked at the kitchen island. "I don't know, Mom. A few times, over the last couple weeks. Before you invited me, or after?" He paused. "I think before. But the invitation was real. We did want you to come. We just thought maybe you wouldn't." I let the sentence sit between us. Then I said, "Daniel, I drove 4 hours this morning to be here. I left my house at 6:43. I brought a ham. I brought a cake. I packed an overnight bag because you told me to plan to stay. I am here. Please bring me into the dining room. Please find me a chair. Please find me a plate. I am ready to eat brunch with my son's family." He nodded quickly. "Of course, Mom, of course." He went into the office and came back with a folding chair. The same metal kind we had used at Robert's wake. He carried it into the dining room and set it at the corner of the table, between Lily and the wall. Then he found a plate, a small glass, and silverware. I walked into the dining room. Brittany looked up. She smiled brightly. "Marjorie, you made it. We were just saying you must have hit traffic." Patricia, Brittany's mother, smiled from the head of the table. "Marjorie, what a long drive. You must be exhausted." I said, "I'm perfectly fine. Thank you, Patricia." I sat down in the folding chair. Lily hugged me sideways without leaving her seat. Audrey waved from across the table. Brunch began. I want to tell you about the brunch. The drive there had lasted 4 hours and 7 minutes. The brunch lasted 40 minutes. The food was catered. Brittany had called it just casual, but there were 3 kinds of quiche: a fruit platter, pastries, a carving station with ham, and a mimosa fountain. A carving station with ham. My ham was still in the cooler on the kitchen island. The rolls I had baked were not served. The green beans were not served. The chocolate cake was not served. The cooler stayed exactly where Daniel had placed it. I did not mention it. The conversation moved around me. Brittany's parents talked about a trip to Charleston. Brittany talked about Lily's class play. The girls told their grandfather, Frank, about a birthday party they had attended. Nobody asked about my drive. Nobody asked about my house. Nobody asked about my sister Margaret, who had been in the hospital twice that winter. I had told Daniel about Margaret 3 times. He had not called her once. I ate a small piece of quiche. I drank orange juice. I smiled when smiling was expected. At 11:43, Brittany stood. "I'll bring out dessert." She returned with a tray of small pastries from the catering order. Fruit tarts, macarons, little lemon squares. The chocolate cake I had brought was still in the cooler. I ate 1 macaron. At noon, exactly 1 hour after I had walked through the front door, Patricia checked her watch. Goodness, the afternoon is going to disappear. Brittany turned toward her father. "Dad, did you and Frank want to head out before traffic?" They stood. There was a flurry of goodbyes. Brittany walked her parents to the door. I remained in the folding chair. When Brittany returned, she looked at me with the polite expression of someone about to say something unkind, in a very gentle voice. "Marjorie, you must be exhausted. You should probably head home before traffic too, or if you wanted to nap before the drive, the guest room is set up." I noticed the construction. She was telling me the visit was over. I had arrived at 10:55. It was 12:09. I had been in the house for 1 hour and 14 minutes. I had driven 4 hours and 7 minutes to get there. I said, "Brittany, sweetheart, I was planning to stay the night. Daniel told me last Wednesday that you wanted to get a good visit in. Has something changed?" Brittany looked at Daniel. Daniel looked at the floor. "Mom, yeah, about that. Lily has recital practice tonight, and we have a friend thing at 4. I should have told you." "When did those plans come up?" "Yesterday. Maybe Friday. I don't remember." "And you didn't think to call me before I drove down?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "I figured we'd play it by ear when you got here." I looked around the dining room. The catered trays. The empty glasses. The crumbs from the pastries. My granddaughter's already playing a board game in the corner. I stood. "Daniel, Brittany, thank you for the brunch. The drive home is 4 hours. I should leave before dark." Brittany said, "Marjorie, thank you for coming, and thank you for the ham. We'll have it for dinner this week." I said, "Of course, sweetheart." I hugged Lily. I hugged Audrey. I told Lily I would call Wednesday to hear about recital practice. I told Audrey I had mailed her a book for her birthday. Then I picked up my overnight bag from the foyer. I walked to my car. Daniel followed me to the curb. He hugged me. "Thanks for coming, Mom. Love you. Drive safe." I said, "I love you too, sweetheart." I got into the car. I drove home. The drive took 4 hours and 26 minutes. There was a backup near the Maryland-Pennsylvania border. I arrived home at 4:43. I sat in my driveway for 9 minutes before going inside. I did not cry. Let me pause here and ask you something honestly. If you had driven 8 hours round trip on Easter Sunday, at 72 years old, with a cooler full of food you had cooked the day before, if the family did not serve any of it, if the brunch lasted 40 minutes, if the overnight visit you were invited for disappeared after 1 hour and 14 minutes, if your own son pulled a folding chair from the office because no one had set a place for you at the table, what would you have done in the next 48 hours? A lot of mothers would have called that night. Some would have cried. Some would have written a long letter explaining how hurt they were. A few would have noticed something larger. I finally became one of the few. Because, by the time I reached Harrisburg, the list had started forming in my mind. Not the money yet, just the list. The drive, the camp, the school clothes, the cooler, the Christmas cards, the birthdays, The transfer. 7 things. When I got home, I brought the cooler inside. The ham was untouched. The rolls were untouched. The green beans were untouched. The cake was untouched. I put the ham in my own refrigerator. I cut myself a slice of chocolate cake and ate it, standing at the kitchen counter. Then I made tea. Then I went to bed at 9. I did not call Daniel. I did not call Brittany. That night, I did nothing else. Tuesday morning was when I started. At 6:30 on Tuesday morning, I sat at my kitchen table with a yellow legal pad and a pen. I made coffee. I did not make breakfast. I wrote 7 things at the top of the page. Then I began adding: summer camp, $13,000 a year, 3 years, $39,000, school clothes, $1,400 a year, 3 years, $4,200, Christmas cards, envelopes, stamps, about $250 in materials for 2 years, $500. That did not count my time. In-law birthday gifts, $900 a year, 3 years, $2,700. Monthly transfer, $200 a month, 36 months, $7,200. Gas, approximately $55 per round trip, 14 trips a year, 3 years, about $2,300. Cooler food, $80 to $100 in groceries per visit, 42 visits, about $3,500. Total, $59,400. I stared at the number. I did not feel angry. That surprised me. I thought anger would come first. It did not. Clarity came first. I picked up the phone. I called my lawyer. Her name was Helen Reeves. Helen had drafted my will after Robert died. She had also handled the small estate matters that come after losing a spouse. The kind of paperwork no widow wants to do. But every widow, eventually, has to face. She answered on the second ring. Marjorie? Helen, I'm sorry to call early. You don't call early unless you need something. Tell me. So I told her. The Easter brunch, the folding chair, the 40 minutes, the overnight bag that had never been unpacked, the cooler full of food, the 7 things, the $59,400. When I finished, Helen was quiet. Then she said, "What would you like to do?" "I want to stop all 7 things, beginning this week." "That can be done. I also want to ask you something." "Go ahead." "Did Robert ever leave anything with you about Daniel and Brittany?" Helen did not answer right away. Then she said yes. I closed my eyes. "What did he leave?" "A folder. Not legal instructions, not a trust amendment, nothing binding. Just a private note and a few pages he asked me to hold." "When?" "Spring of 2017. About a year after Daniel and Brittany married." I looked across the kitchen at Robert's empty chair. Helen continued. "He told me not to mention it unless you ever called me on your own about feeling used, pushed aside, or financially expected by Daniel's household. Those were his words. I wrote them down. I said, he knew." Helen's voice softened. "He suspected a pattern. He did not know what it would become. Can you bring it?" "I can be there at 2. Helen arrived at 2 o'clock. She carried a slim leather portfolio. Inside was a manila folder. Inside the folder was a sealed envelope. On the front, in Robert's careful handwriting, were 5 words. "For Marjorie, when she knows. Not when she is angry. Not when she is hurt. When she knows." I opened it. The letter was not long. That almost made it harder. Robert had never needed many words. It said, "Marjorie, if you are reading this, something I have been afraid of has probably become clear to you. I hope I am wrong. I hope Daniel has learned to protect his relationship with you. I hope Brittany has learned to see you as family, not as help. But if I am not wrong, I want you to have one witness. I have noticed small things. At the wedding, you were seated away from the family table. Last Christmas, you cooked half the food and were thanked as if you had delivered groceries. When you offered to host a holiday, Brittany said her parents did not like to travel, though they had just returned from Spain. You brushed these things aside. That is one of the things I love about you, and one of the things I worry about. You assume the best. But Marjorie, assuming the best does not require you to finance the worst. Daniel is not a cruel son. He is a son who may become comfortable letting someone else decide how much access you get to your own family. That is not the same as cruelty, but it can still hurt you. If the day comes when you realize you have been giving more than love requires, please stop. Not to punish, not to make a scene. Simply stop. I have asked Helen to keep a small list of people who can help you do that. Helen, our credit union contact, and Margaret Holzer at the financial office. The mechanics will be easy. The decision will be hard. When the decision is made, do not negotiate it one item at a time. I love you. I would have driven with you wherever you were going. And if you ever had to drive home hurt, I would have wanted to be in the passenger seat. Robert, I read the letter once. Then again, I did not cry. I placed it on the table. Helen slid 2 more pages toward me. One was a short note Robert had written in 2017. Not a prediction. Not a list of the future. Just observations. Holiday food. Extra gifts. Repeated drives. Being seated away from the center of things. Requests that sounded small until they became routine. The second page was simply 3 names and phone numbers. Helen Reeves. Helen Carter, at the credit union. Margaret Holzer, our financial advisor. I sat with those pages for a long time. Robert had not predicted the 7 things. He had not magically known about the camp, the school clothes, the Christmas cards, or the monthly transfer. He had simply seen the direction of the road before I admitted I was walking it. That made it feel more real. And somehow, more painful. Helen said, "Does this change what you want to do?" I looked at my yellow legal pad. No, it confirms it. I wrote at the top of a fresh page, the 7 things to stop. Under that, I wrote, effective today. I dated it. Then I said, Helen, I want the transfer stopped today. I want Daniel informed in writing. I want the letter to be kind, short, and clear. I do not want to argue about individual items. Helen nodded. That is wise. I also don't want to hurt my granddaughters. Stopping financial arrangements is not the same as withdrawing love. I looked at her. I know that in my head. Helen said, then we will write it in a way your heart can live with. On Wednesday morning, I wrote Daniel a letter. It was not long. I did not accuse. I did not explain my feelings for 3 pages. I did not mention every hurt from the dining room. I wrote the truth. Daniel, I want to tell you clearly what I have decided. I am writing instead of calling, because I want you to have time to read this carefully before responding. Over the past 3 years, I have driven to your house approximately 42 times. I have also paid for the girls' summer camp, their back-to-school clothes, the food I bring for visits, the Christmas cards your household sends, birthday gifts for Brittany's extended family, and a monthly $200 transfer into the girls' savings account. By my count, the total is a little over $59,000. I am not telling you this to make you feel guilty. I am telling you because I have realized these arrangements were never clearly discussed. They became expected, and I allowed that to happen. Effective today, I am stopping them. The monthly transfer has been cancelled. I will not be paying for camp this summer. I will not be buying school clothes in August. I will not be writing Christmas cards. I will not be purchasing birthday gifts for Brittany's family. I will not be bringing a cooler of food on every visit, and I will not be making the 4-hour drive as often. The relationship has not ended. The arrangements have. I love you. I love Lily and Audrey. I want to continue seeing you and the girls, but it will need to happen in a way that does not depend on me quietly carrying things no one has asked me to carry out loud. Helen Reeves has included her number if you would like to discuss the financial details. I am going to give you time to think. I will be home Saturday morning if you want to talk. Love. Mom. Helen reviewed it. She made only one change. She added the sentence, I allowed that to happen. At first, I did not like it. Then I understood it. That sentence gave me back my power. I mailed the letter Wednesday morning. Daniel did not call Wednesday. He did not call Thursday. He called Friday afternoon at 4:15. The first call was not an apology. That is how I knew it was real. Daniel's voice was tight. Mom, I got your letter. I know. Brittany is really upset. I imagine she is. She says the letter makes it sound like we've been using you. I looked out the kitchen window. The tulips Robert planted years ago were coming up along the fence. I said, Daniel, I wrote what I have been doing. I did not tell you what to feel about it. He was quiet. Then he said, some of those things were gifts. Yes. And gifts are gifts, Mum. You can't give something and then act like we stole it. That sentence hurt. But it also helped me, because there was the truth underneath everything. Not cruelty. Entitlement. I said, Daniel, I am not asking for the money back. I am not saying you stole from me. I am saying I am done giving in the same way. He exhaled sharply. The camp is in 6 weeks. I know. The girls are already expecting it. I understand. So what are we supposed to do? I kept my voice calm. You and Brittany are their parents. You will decide what to do. Mum, that's not fair. I closed my eyes for 1 second. Then I opened them. Daniel, what happened on Easter was not fair. Driving 8 hours for 40 minutes of brunch was not fair. Being invited to stay overnight and then being sent home was not fair. Bringing food no one served was not fair. Sitting in a folding chair because no one set a place for me was not fair. He said nothing. I continued. But I am not calling to argue about fairness. I am telling you what has changed. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, softer, I didn't know you felt that way. I know. You should have said something. Maybe, but you also could have noticed. That was the first time he had no answer. I said, Daniel, don't respond to me today. Sit down with the letter. Look at the numbers. Look at the past 3 years. Then call me when you are ready to talk about the relationship, not the money. He said, Mom, I love you, sweetheart. I'm going to hang up now. And I did. My hands shook for 5 full minutes afterward. But I did not call him back. Daniel called again on Sunday evening. This time his voice was different. Not broken. Not dramatic. Quiet. Mum. Yes, sweetheart. I looked at the camp payments. I see. And the transfers. Yes. And Brittany found the card lists. I waited. He said, I didn't know it was that much. I know. I think I didn't want to know. That was the first honest sentence he had given me. So I gave him one back. I think that may be true. He was quiet. Then he said, I'm sorry about Easter. I did not answer right away. He continued, I'm sorry there wasn't a place set for you. I'm sorry about the food. I'm sorry I told you to stay over and then sent you home. I should have called. I should have come outside when you arrived and said we were glad you were there. I should have noticed the chair before you did. I looked at Robert's photograph on the mantel. I appreciate that. I don't know how it got like this. I do. He was silent. I said, "It got like this, one small thing at a time." He made a sound that might have been a laugh if it had not been so sad. "Yeah." Then he said, "Please come down so we can talk in person." I said, "No." He went quiet again. I said, "Not this month. I am taking a break from driving down. If you want to talk in person, you can come here." "The drive is 4 hours." "Yes, it is." He did not miss the point. I said, "Bring the girls if you would like. The guest room here has a softer mattress. There is a park around the corner. I will make dinner. I will not pack it into a cooler and drive it 4 hours." For the first time that week, Daniel gave a small laugh. Then he said, "I'll come up in June." "Good. Brittany may not want to. That is her choice." "I'll bring the girls." "I would like that." Before we hung up, he said, "Mom?" "Yes?" "I love you." "I love you too, sweetheart." This time, when the call ended, I did cry. Not because everything was fixed. It was not. I cried because for the first time in years, I had told the truth without asking permission to tell it. Daniel came up the second weekend in June. He brought Lily and Audrey. Brittany did not come. I did not ask why. The girls ran into my house with overnight bags and the easy affection of children who have not yet learned the adult politics of doorways. Lily hugged me around the waist. Audrey asked whether I still had the cookie cutters shaped like leaves. I did. That Saturday, Daniel and I sat at the kitchen table after the girls went to bed. No lawyer. No Brittany. No performance. Just my son and me, with 2 cups of tea between us. He said, "I didn't realize how little I had been coming here." "I know." I told myself you liked driving. "I do not mind driving. That is not the same thing." He nodded. "I told Brittany we need to pay for camp ourselves." "And?" "She said you were punishing the girls." I looked at him steadily. "And what did you say?" He looked down at his tea. "I said the girls are our responsibility." It was a small sentence. But I knew what it had cost him. I said, "That was the right answer." He wiped his eyes quickly with the heel of his hand. "I'm sorry, Mom. I believe you. Do you forgive me?" I looked toward the hallway, where my granddaughters were sleeping in the room Daniel had slept in when he was a boy. Then I said, "I am working on trusting the change. Forgiveness is not the same as returning to the old arrangement." He nodded slowly. "I understand." I said, "I hope you do." We sat quietly for a while. The house made its night sounds. The refrigerator hummed. The old clock in the living room ticked. Robert's photograph sat on the shelf by the window. For the first time in a long time, I felt like my home was not waiting for people who never came. It was simply mine. On Sunday morning, Audrey asked why I had a framed photograph of Robert in almost every room. I told her, slowly, about her grandfather. I told her he had been a principal. I told her he loved black coffee and old maps. I told her he used to check the tire pressure before every long drive, even if the drive was only 20 minutes. I told her he believed careful people kept other people safe. Lily listened too. Daniel stood in the doorway and said nothing. When they left that afternoon, Daniel hugged me longer than usual. He said, "We'll come back in August." I said, "I would like that." He said, "And Mom?" "Yes." "We'll bring dinner." I smiled. That would be lovely. After they drove away, I walked back into the house. I sat in Robert's reading chair with the notebook I had started after Easter. I wrote one line. I drove 4 hours for Easter brunch, and my son said they thought I would cancel. I did not cancel. I stopped doing the 7 things. And I learned, at 72, that dignity does not always begin with a grand decision. Sometimes it begins with adding up what you have been carrying and finally admitting it is heavy. I closed the notebook. The cake from Easter was still in the freezer. The cooler was clean and back in the garage. The monthly transfer had stopped. The camp payment would be handled by the children's parents. The Christmas cards would be written by the household that sent them. The birthday gifts would come from people who actually knew the recipients. And the drives, when they happened, would happen on my terms. Robert had not saved me. He had simply left a light on, years before I was ready to use it. The walking had been mine. The stopping had been mine. And the road home, finally, belonged to me. Sometimes dignity does not arrive with shouting. Sometimes it arrives at a kitchen table on a Tuesday morning, with a yellow legal pad, a cup of cold coffee, and the courage to write down the truth. Not to punish anyone, not to prove anything, just to stop carrying what was never yours alone to carry.